I'm Scott Lucas. This is today's EA Worldview on Israel and Iran. Here's a story, courtesy of Israel, about what did not happen at the World Economic Forum in Davos in Switzerland when Iranian President Hassan Rouhani addressed the audience. The Israeli delegation did not walk out. In contrast to recent appearances at the United Nations, at Geneva, at other international forums, the Israelis sat and listened to an Iranian head of government talk to them about nuclear issues, issues of foreign policy, issues about the Middle East. Afterwards, there was criticism of Rouhani, of course, from many elements in the Israeli press and the Israeli government. He hadn't been clear enough that Iran was going to get rid of its capability for a bomb. He hadn't been forthcoming enough in dealing with issues like Syria. He hadn't renounced Iranian support for terrorists like Hamas and Hezbollah. But still the fact remains that they didn't walk out. And it's more than that. Here's another story from Davos. An Israeli journalist from the Times of Israel said, you know what, we sat down at a table and there was an Iranian there. And the Iranian found out that we were from Israel and he looked really uncomfortable and he shifted and he got away so quickly that he left behind his secret papers. Wow, if I could only have picked up those papers, I would have had a real scoop. Well, no, here's your real scoop, Mr. Israeli journalist. Your real scoop is that while you're telling these kind of fun stories about uncomfortable Iranians, that the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and his government have been relatively silent about the interim nuclear deal. Netanyahu, who denounced President Rouhani as a wolf in sheep's clothing, who insisted that Iran wanted to have its yellow cake and eat it too. He hasn't actually come out and said that this is a totally bad deal. He hasn't trumpeted, as he did at the end of last year, that there can be no resolution with Iran without at least stricter, tougher sanctions or, beyond that, military action. Why is that? We said a few months ago that it isn't just a case of Netanyahu, that there are many people in Israel, many people within the establishment, within the military, within the intelligence services, who are coming around to accepting the fact that there would have to be a nuclear deal. Of course, Israel would not be in the front of this, but as the United States and the other 5+1 powers sat down at the table with Tehran, Israel would have to accept certain arrangements. In other words, Iran would be allowed to enrich uranium provided it was not on the point of an imminent capability for a bomb. That still leaves a lot of problems for Israel. It's caught up in the fight with Iran over Palestine, over Lebanon, over other points of influence. That contest will continue. But the fact is that continuing to shout about Iran, continuing to say that there could be no negotiation with the Islamic Republic and its Ayatollahs, was hurting Israel diplomatically. It was isolating it. Netanyahu's silence over the last few weeks is an acceptance of that position. Israel's still waiting. The hardliners, in other words, or the hawks, if you want to call them like Netanyahu, will be there if the negotiations break down or collapse. But if the negotiations continue and move towards a comprehensive agreement, this will be a tale of the Israeli hardliners who didn't shout, who came around to the fact that they in Iran can, at times, sit down at the same table, or at least sit there while the other speaks. I'm Scott Lucas, and this has been today's EA Worldview on Israel and Iran.